let's go ladies first.
Okay, thanks. I drove up here from Portland, Oregon, just to ask you this question. So regarding inheritance pattern, I just got your book, Presence of the Past. I haven't started to read it. I wish I would have before I came. I'm a shamanic healing practitioner and a psychotherapist and an advanced psyche practitioner, and actually took my first training with you, Bruce. And when I use psyche, I have suffering beings and dead people come forward for help, and also what appears to be ancestral curses that are, the farthest back I've been taken is to the 1400s, that are showing up in patterns in a marriage today. And I'm wondering about how this can be explained from a scientific perspective. Because my clients say to me, what is going on? And feel freaked out.
So who's your question to?
Both, either.
Yeah. What's IK mean?
Psyche,
Oh, psyche.
psychology,
And energy
kinesiology.
Oh, I see, right.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to say?
Well, then now here comes a leap. And the leap is that when I started to understand the nature of the cell membrane as the brain, I also realized that all of us share the same cells, live in the same environment. We have different lives and different experiences. So it's not just cells in an environment. There's something personal to ourselves. And I started identifying the nature of our cell membranes. There are antennas, protein antennas, that are reading the field. That there's a different set of antennas on your cells than anybody else's cells in the world. And this is why we can't transplant tissue from one person to another, because the antennas are identity. And some of them are called self-receptors, which receivers of self. When I started understanding, I realized that the field was playing into the biology. I also recognized, of course, that the biology was playing back into the field. It's a two-way street. And so to take it to a level that even is like practical level for me, it was when I understood that I had an identity outside of myself that was there and independent of my biology, because it was a field. And whether my cells are here or not, that field is there. And I started to realize that if my identity is out there and it plays through my receptors and it plays into my body, and then I have these dual existence. I have a physical part of my life and I have a non-physical part of my life. And when I started to realize that, it's interesting because I asked my cells a question. And I realize now they're Jewish cells because I asked them a question, they answered with a question.
I'm Jewish, Bruce, be careful.
So I asked my cells, well, if I have an outside there and an inside life here, why both? And the answer came out so clear at that moment. My cells just said, Bruce, if you were just a spiritual existence, what does chocolate taste like? If you're just a spiritual entity, what does a sunset look like? Or what does being in love feel like? And I realized, oh my goodness, there's this exchange. I get into this body and I can sense the world and I can experience it. But it's not just here, my experiencing, sensing is out here. I'm not in here, I'm out here. So that when I live a life, I'm changing my source through my life as well. So it's a two-way street. So I think that we put information in the field, and once it's in the field, it's in the field. And that the next time an identity comes back with the same set of receptors, that individual is coming back in again at some point. That's my take on it. But it really accounts for the fact that I see that there's an identity for us that is picked up by these antennas that is not a material identity and it's something from the field. So it would speak to an ongoing identity that's out there and that's changeable by our personal experiences. Is that, I don't know how that fits.
A slightly different take I'd have. I think that we all tune into a kind of collective memory through morphic resonance. And I'll be saying more about this tomorrow morning. The collective memory into which we tune includes all people, but above all it includes people who are most like us, so members of our family, past generations. are particularly important in this memory that works through through morphic resonance. This works through the field. It's based on similarity. It works through the morphic fields of the brain and the body. And in principle, things that have happened in past generations can affect what happens now. In fact, in animals, most of their instincts are habits inherited through morphic resonance. The shape of the body through the morphic fields is inherited through morphic resonance. This is a form of inheritance that depends on genes making the right proteins, but it goes way beyond what genes can do. Now, whether or not a curse or a pattern in a family could work over so many generations is, to my mind, simply an empirical question. I mean, I haven't looked at the cases that you're referring to, so I can't answer the question specifically. But in principle, there's a way in which memories can work across generations, and normally in the form of collective memories. So, yes, I mean, inheritance involves much more than genes. I think genes are grossly overrated, in fact. The inheritance and morphic resonance, I think, is that part of it which gives rise to the organization of form, behavior, and instinct, which is inherited directly by this influence from the past. For those who are not familiar with the idea, it may sound totally obscure, but I'll try and make it a bit clearer tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question about that? When you're talking about the morphic resonances as a collective, can it be composed of individual, like, you know, in a parallel sense, like cells make up a body? Can morphic resonance be made up of smaller, you know, units of individualized morphic resonance?
Well, if you have influence from many people in the past, you get a kind of blur, a superimposition. But morphic resonance is based on morphic fields which are organized in nested hierarchies. So you'd have resonance to do with particular small patterns, you'd have the bigger patterns. There's every level of organization would have morphic resonance involved. So I don't think that that cultural inheritance depends on sort of atomistic means, like genes.
Yeah.
I think it depends on, there's smaller and there's bigger patterns. All of these can be
Well, cultural, but that's automatically, by saying that, you've already included a large, you know,
Yes.
population.
Yes.
But I was just wondering if individual resonances collectively could make a cultural reference.
Well, that's how the cultural ones come about, from individual contributions. But if you have, say, in the morphic resonance underlying the English language and the ability of babies to learn it, and we've all contributed to it by speaking it. We're all contributing. I mean, you and I speak differently, so does everyone in this room. But when you put it all together in the morphic resonance, you get a kind of generic English language characteristics that we all inherit when we learn English. We each contribute to it. Some of us may even contribute new words, but the language as a whole is a composite from many individuals. They all contribute. But all the people who speak English have to be individuals. I mean, there is no sort of nebulous cultural English speaker that is beyond individuals, but we're all part of this field.